glad to have you back and welcome to this segment of Nigeria Decides. This time around, we're going to be looking at diaspora and e-voting, and to do justice to this topic, we have with us Abiola Salami, a leadership expert. Good evening. And Achike Chude, welcome back to the studio.
It's a pleasure.
All right, now INEC recently has urged the National Assembly to expedite action by amending the sections of the Constitution and the Electoral Act to accommodate Nigerians in diaspora to participate in the electoral process and also to be able to vote. Now, the question is, why hasn't this been passed into law? Why has this not been expedited?
You look at the
so
likes
that
of
it can
Ghana,
happen?
for example, and they had that incorporated in their voting process. It's just absurd to think Nigeria is still lagging behind.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
Mr. Chude, we'll start with you because we're always quick to compare ourselves to America. But
we
now
have
we have
Ghana.
Ghana that's next door. So why do you think we have this situation stalled?
Well, maybe a very simple or simplistic answer could be that Nigeria is not Ghana.
Smart one.
But then, I mean, the reality is that we need to move electoral space forward. We need to be innovative. We need to, be advanced in the way we do our things.
Are we
Because
not advanced?
obviously, Nigeria, there are Nigerians abroad who have a stake in their own country, and they have their own perception of what they feel their country should be and what the leadership of this country could be. And I think it is painful to get them excluded from the political process in Nigeria, especially if you look around, beyond, of course, from Europe. A lot of these things are borrowed from Europe and the rest. But the fact that you talk about Ghana just backdoor here, that gone ahead of Nigeria, it tells you something about their politics, and the fact that they seem to be ahead of this country in terms of political stability. Of course, that they have perfected the act of, removing incumbent governments and then replacing them with a different government, only to have them removed again. And so that gives you an idea that their democracy is advancing, much more than ours, and that is the truth. And there are obvious implications. The economy is getting much better, and there is stability within Ghana as a country. It is not to say that they do not have their own political issues. So it starts, from that perspective. They've been able to take it to that extent, and I think that it won't be bad for Nigeria. Thank God that the INEC is already thinking in that direction. This is something that we should have done. But also do not forget that we have peculiar situations, socio-political situations that we have not been able to resolve successfully. The issue of, for instance, electronic voting. When Maurice Iwu was in charge, the matter came up, and they were looking at moving in that direction. But there were all kinds of arguments people were making that the state of infrastructure in this country, especially with regards to energy, is not such that can accommodate this kind of innovation in the political process. So these are some of the issues, and they are critical issues. For instance, in Ghana today, we have been hearing talk about serious improvement in
Power supply?
in power, transmission, generation and transmission, and all of that. So these things would also play a role ultimately at the end of the day.
Quickly, Abiola, I would also like to have your thoughts now. Some school of thought to say, well, if we had the Electoral Act become law, some of these issues would definitely have been a thing of the past and would have been forced to incorporate all of these. But what's also your thought on it's never too late for us to start, at least having your embassies as a platform where the Nigerians abroad get to vote and all of those? We shouldn't be deprived of that.
I mean, for me, I would say that as much as we are saying that we should have moved beyond this place right now, I think it's a good thing that it's in the conversation, that it's not out of the conversation. And since it's in the conversation, it is now about taking a step forward to doing that. I am not sure that in 2 weeks, because the presidential election is 2
INEC
weeks
says
away.
that there is no diaspora voting.
So
That's true.
I'm not sure this can happen within the next 2 weeks, but we can start to look at the next election and put structure in place right now, not then, not a year to the next election, start putting structure in place right now to ensure that our friends, our family members, our relatives abroad can vote. And think about it, we shouldn't disenfranchise them. It is said that part of the people sending back money home, the Nigerians top the chart. The people sending back money home from Europe, from America, from other places.
So they're improving the economy,
They're improving the economy. Their contribution is improving the economy. So if they are doing that, I think it is just wise that we ensure that they have the opportunity to vote and even to have a wee feeling as well, as much as they are abroad, to still have a sense of responsibility that they're Nigerians.
I have a concern, and this is the concern of so many critics. The fact that most Nigerians who live in diaspora are not necessarily legal. So again, the embassies do not necessarily also have a proper number of these people who are in diaspora. Bring it back home. The former NPC boss, that's a former National Population Commission boss, said something about the fact that the figures when we're doing our population is a bit inflated. So if we're not getting it right population-wise in Nigeria, how are we going to get it right outside Nigeria? And how many of those Nigerians who really want to vote are legal? How do we synergize all of that to make it happen?
My quick response is I would say most Nigerians are illegal. I would say some Nigerians could be illegal. I won't even say some Nigerians are illegal. I would say some Nigerians could be illegal. It is about starting from somewhere. So there are people, Nigerian passport carrying citizens who are in the US, who are in Europe, who are in Asia, wherever they are. There are people who are legal. So why don't we start with that? Because when we want to solve a problem, we should not have the thought that we want to solve everything at once. We want to just eat the entire elephant, but we want to bite it bit by bit, bit by bit. So those who are confirmed, those who at the embassies have their records, let them gather somewhere in 2000, and this is 19 now, 23, I think, 2023, let them vote. So we start doing that gradually. Once we cross that, even if it happened in only one embassy, once we cross that, we know that we started improvement towards ensuring that Nigerians in diaspora are included in the voting mechanism.
Now, when we're also talking about e-voting to beyond the power sector and the supply of that area to that area, there are other lingering issues that we also have to address. But in your thought, if we haven't had enough of orientation and a whole lot of, we've not yet perfected the process of election manually, how do you think we'll then get it right when we are supposed to get things done electronically?
Yeah, well, again, maybe the part of the response will be the fact that it's a process, and democracy is a process. Elections itself is not, election is not an end in itself, it's also a process, and so you start from somewhere, just like Biola is also saying. You start from somewhere, you move from one step to the next step and then to the next step. And again, you want to remember what happened from 1999. The level of violence, political violence, specifically political assassination of political opponents, was on the up. In 2003, it was the same thing. Nowadays, we are not seeing that anymore. Of course, you talk about the Barnabas Igwe and their wife incidents, the Zisuliata Dedibu, so many of them, Funshaw Williams and all of that, but we're no longer seeing it. Now, it could be that the politicians have learned a lesson. Maybe they have learned to do it differently. Instead of eliminating their opponents, the next thing is to rig them out, perhaps. You understand? But I'm saying that there is a process and there is an improvement, in the temperament of politics. So with regards to the, question or your observation you have made too, it is still a process.
Are you impressed now if we are talking about not having diaspora or out-of-country Nigerians participating in this year's election? We have INEC saying that only duly registered internally displaced persons within Nigeria will be allowed to vote, and that's across all of the both presidential and governorship. But those who are displaced away from their states of origin where they were registered can only vote in the presidential election. How do you think this would also affect the turnout or the playout of the election results?
I think it's a no-brainer to say that they can only vote during the presidential election. Why? The presidential election is federal, it's everywhere. So someone is in state A and has been displaced to state B, yes, the person cannot vote for whoever is the gubernatorial candidate in the place. Yes, we will not have the best when it comes to the gubernatorial election, But again, like I always say, it's a process. So the one we can resolve, let us resolve it.
That now begs the
The one-
question that integration into their communities, because at the end of the day, you can't say because I have been displaced and I'm now residing here, you now say because you shifted here or you had to run for safety here.
But
you are
again,
denied.
that's a different kettle of fish altogether, because you are now talking about the capacity of the government to ensure stability in the places where these people are coming from. That becomes a different, argument altogether. You're talking about, the security of the country and the rest, and a government that lacks the ability to do all of that, at a particular or material point in time. So these things are there. But beyond that, again, is the fact that our country is notorious for not having enough data, because you were talking about people, IDPs and non-IDPs and all of that, people displaced in so many places. There's always that possibility that you're going to have a lot of Nigerians, especially in some parts of the country. No, a lot of people who are not necessarily Nigerians, but who have been registered as Nigerians that will be involved in this electoral process, again, is part of the contradictions that we have not been able to resolve in the country.
All right, let's talk about corruption. Whether we like it or not, it's a problem in the country, and you cannot, separate it from the electioneering process. There are also concerns that the issue of corruption comes up regularly, whether within or without. How can we make sure that people are not using diaspora to rig these elections?
Okay, good question. We've talked about engaging people from the diaspora to vote. And there will be clear records, I think, based on those who, the embassies have their details, people who are carrying Nigerian passports there. So I think that is what should be done. And the same mechanism that INEC is perhaps using to try to manage rigging here, I think the same thing can be copied, and transferred to the place. It is said that hardly will there be any election, and this is not a Nigerian conversation, this is a global conversation. Hardly will there be an election that there may not be some form of interference. And so the regulatory authority is on a continuum working towards ensuring that the incidence of rigging is reduced to the barest minimum. We do hope and we want to trust that INEC has this commitment to ensure that the cases of rigging is reduced to the barest minimum, so that the election is really truly free and fair, whether it is within the country or even for those in diaspora.
Yeah, and I want to also just comment that one of the greatest discouragement for election, for corruption, especially of the electoral process, is punishment. The reality is that over the years we have continued to see all kinds of infraction and malfeasance, having to do with the elections, and ultimately nobody's punished for it. And that is, it is said that once a crime goes unpunished, the heart of the people is filled with rebellion. They want to do the same thing because somebody has, gotten away with it. In virtually all the states in the country, in Edo State, Anambra State, the recent elections we've had, Ondo State, Ekiti State, Osun State, and all of that, we have seen, all manners of, manipulation of the process, thuggery and all of that. But we're not exactly sure how many people have been punished. And beyond even punishing the actual culprits that, were involved in this, the people on whose behalf their principals they are working, it is important to get these people punished, get them removed from, following, of course, based on the law, the electoral law itself, remove them from the process so that others will be able to learn a lesson, that the consequences of doing this will be very, very severe, too much for them to bear. And that is one major way of actually, sending clear signals to these other people. For instance, look at, you were discussing, I think, your last segment about, is it Zamfara State and the River State. And though unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way, the courts have overturned the one in River State. But you see, for a party that was not able to get its act right, you understand, and behave in manners that would accord with certain, electoral principles or electoral laws, then there has to be a punishment, so that other parties will also learn a lesson that you cannot continue to do these things and get away with it, and then we want a process that is clean and clear.
Now, in the nearest future, do you expect that we are supposed to push this discourse, especially with relation to the Electoral Act becoming law and then addressing all of these issues? And even when we are looking at e-voting, for example, the transmission of these results and etc., it still has to do with infrastructure, looking at internet infrastructure. Do we have that in place? Can we actually achieve all of these? What areas of conversation do you now think our lawmakers are supposed to be pushing this conversation right after election? The next government is supposed to kick this starting.
Yeah, well, if you're asking me, the reality is that there are so many...
Because the next 4
Yeah.
years is just...
Around the corner.
Around the corner.
Yeah. The reality is that I'm not going to sit down here and tell you that, look, we're going to get it right when it comes to energy generation and distribution and transmission in this country. I'm not going to sit down here and predict what is going to happen because, I mean, after all, they've been working on it for decades and they've not been able to move it beyond where we are today. So I cannot speak for the incoming government about the ability to get
but
that
what
done.
do you
But the
expect
reality,
in terms of
but,
commitment?
Yeah, but the reality is that there are ways you can bypass some of these things. You now have, you know, infrastructure for inverters, you know, for some of these things that can be used to bypass this process if we don't get it right by then. And I think that these are some of the things that we could use. We must be able to move forward from where we are today. But again, even when the president turned down, refused to sign the Electoral Act, you know, as you know, from the National
Because that
Assembly.
will also cover transmission of election results electronically.
His response in a way was he was only talking about the timeline, not even the content of the act itself. He said, look, we can get it done by 2023. The next, I mean, the incoming government in 2023 could get it done. But obviously there were a few things that he didn't want to attempt. I do not believe it was because of time, but it was pure politics at that particular point in time. So I think that, you know, we need to keep on working hard at it. At least the reality is that there's a vision. They have an idea where they want to get this country in terms of, you know, the elections and all of that. And in a way, in spite of the misgivings, in spite of the setbacks that we have had, in a way, we have also made some progress. You know, so we should just keep on at it.
Let's talk about information technology. We're in the 21st century, and the world is, in fact, 50 years ahead of us when it comes to, we're playing catch up. And when it comes to e-voting, you cannot talk about diaspora voting without e-voting. If we're keying into IT in other aspects of the Nigerian economy, why leave this one out? It's a question that's been running in my mind. I mean, we even had the Facebook CEO come to Nigeria. This is where we should have been thinking. I mean, we should have been thinking in this direction. As much as we want to go global with our voting, why have we failed to? And this is not the first time this issue has been brought up. And here we are in 2019. That issue is still somewhat muted. Do we ever plan to play catch up anytime soon, or we just wait for, you know, when it's close to elections, we come up with these interesting ideas, and then we just say, oh, well, we can't do it now, we'll push it, and when, you know, it just keeps going in circles.
In by way of recommendation, we can't sit here and say that this is what should happen and this is when it will happen.
Why? Are you not a Nigerian?
No, we are Nigerians, but you need the constitutional power to make certain decisions happen. But by way of recommendation, anytime there is a problem, and I'm not just talking about elections now, anytime there's a problem, the way the government has been, and I'm not just talking about the incumbent now, I'm even referring to the government as it is culturally, is that people wait until there is another time to talk about it again. Everything we're discussing about the electioneering process, in terms of curbing rigging, in terms of making it e-voting, in terms of engaging the diasporas, the time to have the conversation for the 2023 election is now, not in 2022. So whatever issues there may be, make a recommendation the other time. There are people using alternative power sources. That cannot be an excuse. That should not be an excuse. That is, even if we've not gotten power right by then. That shouldn't be an excuse. Internet service as well, the same thing. I mean, we have telecoms in different places, and there's internet service. You know, a particular network may not work in the place, another one may work in the place, but if there's real commitment, I'm sure it can happen. So the recommendation would be that from now, can we look at the issues while we are facing this election? Immediately after this election, the gubernatorial election happens on the 2nd of March, if I'm correct. So immediately after the results are announced, can INEC begin to work towards ensuring that we will use cutting-edge technology and process by the 2023 elections. It should not come up in 2022.
But
No,
this is also something
unconnected to the release of the funds for INEC to conduct all of this. Now, do you also expect that anytime soon we would have the funds for budgetary allocation for INEC separated from the fiscal year's budget? Because at the end of the day, just barely 21 days ago, so there was an INEC official here and he said, well, the officials hadn't yet gotten their monies for training and other INEC materials. So what do you expect, especially when we are talking about funds this time around, Achike?
Unfortunately, our political elites are not, have not shown the requisite...
Is it an intentional means of exploitation?
No, it's politics, first of all. It's politics. The whole thing is about politics. And the politics that is played in this country, I mean, according to our political elites, it's not the politics of the people. It's politics of the self. It's politics of their political structure, first of all, not the politics of Nigeria. So they are not looking at the country, you understand, and saying, look, we need to be in the 21st century. We need to begin to operate at that level. The issue, and that's why our hospitals are not working. That is why all kinds of social infrastructure are not working in this country. That's why our education is in the situation that it is today. So you cannot remove the politics of this country. You cannot remove elections, you know, from the table and say, well, because election is so special, it must be treated differently from the way we are treating education. Because it's the same mindset, the same political elites that are also supervising all of these institutions. So we see this decadence in virtually all of the institutions of state, including some of the issues that we're having, you know, with the election. If you have a visionary political elite, your political class, you have a committed political class, you know, they will be able to think ahead and say, look, this is for the future generations. This is not for now. But we have a set of people, politicians and elites, who are thinking always of the now, of the moment, rather than the future,
but
rather
don't you
than the
expect
little
the
kids.
lawmakers now to say that, well, we should push that the funding for INEC and carrying out the activities, especially
beyond
for
the lawmakers, beyond the lawmakers, we also
and
have
even
to,
the everyday Nigerian, because I believe politics is all about numbers. So if you have the masses say, well, we want this, then that can put...
That's where I'm going to. You know, beyond the politicians, since we have already identified the fact that these people are driven more by primordial, parochial interest most of the time, then you must have a civil society that is up and doing, that is aware of what is at stake, and that is ready to work assiduously to ensure that the public good is protected by putting constant pressure on the political class.
But how many
people,
how many of us, the electorate, are well informed to be able to partner with these civil societies? Because there are people who would say, civil societies, when they see money, that's when they only push for issues that are beneficial to them again. So how do you, as civil societies, or you know, whoever it is, even the NOA, get people to understand the need for them to participate in the process?
Let me just say this. In as much as we also believe that the civil society is part of the system that is not exactly working, and they have also been compromised. You have some of them that have also been compromised. But the reality is that this country has been able to get as far as it has gotten with the help of civil societies. There are very genuine concerned civil societies out there, and they have been working hard all this while to build a better country, put the right kind of pressure on the politicians. But you also have those people who have joined the bandwagon. People, I mean, you also have civil societies that are created by governments and politicians. And so you see them also, whenever you have the genuine ones, for instance, protesting, you know, or kicking against a particular move by certain segments of the political class, you see the government-owned or the politician-owned civil society organizations with their propaganda, all those things to counter the effort of these ones. But as it is said, by their fruits we shall know them. We know those ones that are genuine, and we know those ones that are working, you know, for other interests.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we want to thank you very much for being part of the conversation. We want to appreciate you, Mr. Abiola Salami. He is a leadership expert, and of course, we want to thank you, Achike Chude, for being here. Thank you, gentlemen.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been an interesting conversation. Well, we have to take a short break, and when we come back, Nigeria Decides continues. Stay with us.